My name is Aleksandar Nikolic. I will talk about Azure Automation as a management solution for all clouds, private and public. It's really a privilege to be here, and I'm really one of the lucky ones to be here for the third time. So a little bit about me. I'm a cloud and data center management MVP now. It used to be PowerShell before. And from January, I'm also Microsoft Azure MVP. So I'm also co-founder of PowershellMagazine.com and community manager of the oldest PowerShell-related community portal, PowerShell.com. You can find me on Twitter as Aleksandar. It's spelled a little bit different than English pronunciation of my name, but you will figure it out. And we will start with Azure Automation overview. So what is Azure Automation? First, to get a little bit of hands now, how many of you are familiar with Azure Automation? How many of you are actively using Azure Automation? Just a few. OK. So there is a little bit of a change how Azure Automation is positioned among Azure services lately. So right now, the Azure Automation is part of something bigger, right? A Microsoft cloud-based management called Operation Management Suite. I think that Michael talked about that in a previous session if you were here. And Azure Automation now covers two things. It has two capabilities: to automate processes with the runbooks, and also to automate configuration management using desired state configuration. That's a big change compared to a previous year, for example, if you visited some of the Azure Automation sessions then. And everything is performed in a cloud, but the targets can be in cloud, and doesn't mean only Azure. It can be Amazon Web Services as well, or can be OpenStack, and targets can be also on premises. And they can be virtual or physical as well for a lot of things. So things are really, really changing in this area. And it looks like Microsoft had that vision that the future management will be cloud-based. We will still need to see what will happen with Azure Stack that was recently released as technical preview 1, because Azure Automation doesn't exist as a service there. We might get it, but we will see what will happen. So when we need to start with Azure Automation, the first thing we need to do is we need to create automation account. Automation account really is there for multiple purposes. First, it will isolate your automation resources, but it can also help you with the billing, or with environments. So you can create one automation account for testing, and one for developing, and one for production as well. It's associated with a single region, but that doesn't mean that you cannot manage resources from other regions, okay? And it's not available in all regions. Right now, it's available only in 6 regions, and one of them is West Europe, which is really good for us, because it's closest to us. There are also some differences between automation account that you create in a so-called Azure Classic portal that used to be Azure Management Portal, all the old portal, but now we have this new one. It used to be Preview, and now it's just GA, and it's Azure Portal. So if you create automation account in the classic one, that account will be visible in the new Azure Portal. But if you create Azure Automation account in a new portal, that one will not be visible in the old one. So recommendation is to work with new portal, to create your automation account in a new one, and also some of the features are not even available in the old one. So from now on, work with the portal.azure.com. What are the mentioned Azure Automation resources? We have a bunch of them. We have runbooks. We will talk more about them in a future slides. Then we have assets, something that is really, really cool and very needed if you worked with a PowerShell from a console, but now you have a great background support by a database when you store some of the assets that you can share between your runbooks and also these state configurations, which is really great. We have a couple of them. We have modules, credentials, certificates, variables, schedules, and connections. Connections are very similar to credentials, but if you need to set some other properties, not just username and a password, but for example, a port or some URL, then you will use connections to have them all grouped in one asset. Then we have jobs. So once when you start your runbook, the result of that will be a job. And then you can just look later for a result that it's produced by the runbook through the life cycle of a job. We also have hybrid runbook workers, and they are really, as they say, like a game changer, right? Hybrid runbook worker is a machine on premises that can execute runbooks that actually exist in Azure Automation. I will show you how can you connect, how can you practically first promote one of your machines into a hybrid worker server and then work with Azure Automation. And then we have a new thing, DSC nodes and configurations. Azure Automation DSC became generally available, I think, like a month ago. So all the things related to Azure are changing so fast. And you can see that a lot as well when you work with Azure Automation. Just in the last week, they introduced 3 new updates to a service. Not very big ones, but still some updates. So things are changing all the time. It's just amazing how that works. So the first thing that we need to do, we need to configure authentication to Azure resources if we want to target Azure resources. And this is really how it started. Right now, Microsoft has a little bit of a problem with the branding, because when people hear about Azure Automation, they think that we can use that service only to manage Azure resources, which is not true anymore. When they introduced hybrid runbook workers, that things changed, because now we can also manage on-premises resources. So that they might change it, I don't know, but I know that they're not very satisfied right now, because a lot of people are thinking like, oh, this is only for Azure, so I don't care about it for now, which is not true. So you need to provide authentication to your Azure subscription. And for that, you need organizational account. Okay? How can you create one? People say, like, yeah, but I don't have Office 365, or I don't use Azure AD. Once when you have an Azure subscription, you also have default Azure AD. You are already a tenant, so you can add a user and promote it to an administrator for Azure Automation. The problem is right now that it's not supported in an Azure portal. You need to go to Classic One to do that stuff. So even if you look at the options and you see Azure Active Directory as a service, and you click on it, you will be redirected to an old one. And then in old one, you will add that user. You will set that as a co-admin for your subscription. Then you will log out and log in as that new user, because you need to change a password. And after that, you can use that user for your automation purposes. How you will do that, you will create credential assets, so that you don't need to be present to do that, right? The point of Azure Automation is to automate everything without manual interventions. So we have as assets, and we have credential assets as well. So you will create one that you will use for all authentication that you need. You cannot use Microsoft account with Azure Automation. So you need to create this organizational ID, okay? Don't even try with Microsoft account, it doesn't work. It doesn't work even when you go to a PowerShell and you try to use add Azure account or add Azure RM account with credential parameter. If you pass your Microsoft ID credentials, they will not work, okay? So how does that look like usually in a code? you need to use get automation PS credential activity. That activity exists only in the runbooks, and that will get you information about your asset. The point here is that it's really nice when you have those credential assets because you will just reference to a name, not to the actual credentials. You don't care about passwords anymore. Once when you have that asset, you are done. And you can put a lot of things there and just reuse them. It's really cool. Also, when you work with variables, you can create encrypted variables if you need it. So it solves a lot of problems that we have we work with a PowerShell in a console, and people usually say, like, okay, but I need to use some credentials, and how can I store them, and what's the secure way to do it? Here we have a nice solutions for it. And then if you have multiple subscriptions connected to your account, then you need to select one that you want to manage. We also have a role-based access control, and it's set on automation account level, okay? So you cannot set it on a particular automation resources. It's for the whole account, and right now, at this moment, we have 5 built-in roles: owner, contributor, reader, automation operator, and user access administrator. There is good documentation about Azure Automation, and those things are covered, so you will get information about all the single permissions that are coming with those roles. I don't have time to go through every single detail, but I will show you in a demo how it looks like when someone is just automation operator. That guy only has access to executing runbooks and looking at jobs, but he cannot do anything else. And you will see how that experience looks like. And you will see that very quickly just in this demo. So how it works. The first thing you need to do is you need to set that for particular user. The good thing is that you can do that with a user that already exists in your Active Directory, or you can invite someone who is outside of your Azure AD, and that guy will be added to your Azure AD as guest. So this is what I have done here. This is an icon for it, for access. You get users and the list of roles. You can see that the subscription admins is immediately owner of automation account here. And this Aleksandar 2015 is added as an automation operator. So how things are looking when that guy comes to my subscription. So here I'm logged in as Aleksandar 2015. What I need to do first, I need to change directory. So I will move to Aleksandar 2016, my new one, for this year. And then the things will change, so I will see what's available to me, and I will see that my account is available. If I click on it, you can see here that I don't have access to a certain resources. DSC configuration, DSC nodes, hybrid workers, no access. Here, I don't have access for statistics. If I go deep into assets, you see that I don't have access to anything else but schedules. Okay? So this is the experience. So if that guy wants to do something, he will go here. He can only execute these runbooks and then follow what's happening with the job, but he cannot change anything, which is really great. Let's see here again how we create a new account. How does it look like when you just create a fresh one? You usually go to New, and then you go to Management, and from a list you pick Automation, and then you specify name, Nick. I realize that it's really my last name, very similar to the name of a conference. So I have a Nikolic here as the name of my automation account. I can go to a region, pick West Europe, check the default settings. It says, okay, do you want me to create a default tutorial runbook so that people will see how to work with the resources, how to authenticate? I say, okay. And then you will create one. And it will be created very quickly. Usually it needs just a few seconds. It looks like it's a little bit shy now with a big audience, so it needs more time. So this is how it looks like. So what we have at the beginning is just like that one runbook for tutorial that I created and 15 assets. Okay? Those are actually those modules. And modules are, this is also a big change lately because at first Azure Automation supported only service management-based commandlets, and they belong to Azure module. But when they started promoting and working more with the resource manager modules, they started now adding RM modules as well. So they started very, I think just with the 3 of them, with the compute profile and the automation, but then now just this week added a few more. And because there is like 24 or 25 of those modules, they will add some of them through time. Right now they ask like community and customers like, what do you think you needed the most? And people say like, okay, I will need support for SQL, and they added a SQL and stuff. So they had some problems just adding all of them at once, so they are doing that in steps. And you can also add your own module as well. One of the recent changes is actually a module gallery. So if you haven't heard about it, the Microsoft created a PowerShell Gallery.com, which is Microsoft-owned but public gallery, PowerShell repository for PowerShell artifacts, as they like to say, because now they support not just modules but also scripts. And members of community can participate and add their own modules, or other product groups as well, or Amazon has their own commandlets there, or Dell has something, or some other companies as well. So now they incorporated that into interface for Azure Automation. So when you click Browse Gallery, you practically get a kind of a view of all the PowershellGallery.com offers to you as modules. So you can add them here. So I don't know, let's see. What's the one that we don't have? I mean, I would like one feature to tell me if something is already added to my account, for example. That would be kind of nice. But this one is created by one of the PowerShell MVPs to support SSH. For example, and you get a list of commandlets and functions that are exposed to you, and when you are done, you say import, and then Azure Automation will import that, and then those things are packed as a zip, so they will kind of extract all those activities so that you can use them for your runbooks. And if in case that you imported DSC configuration, DSC resource, then you will use that in a DSC configuration. So back to a runbook. So what is a runbook, right? So that's a set of tasks that can perform a long-running process in automated fashion. And right now we have 3 different kinds. They started with PowerShell workflow runbooks, but then people that are familiar with the orchestrator and they wanted to migrate to Azure Automation, like we needed a graphical ones as well because we are familiar with that, so they created the graphical runbooks as well. So you can use web browser and have that graphical editor there for graphical runbooks. Very recently, I think in, let's say, September, they released also support for pure PowerShell script runbooks. Why? Because people complained that PowerShell workflows are too complex. No? They are using the syntax that it looks like a PowerShell, but it's not actually PowerShell because it needs to be compiled into XAML. It's executed by a different engine, not PowerShell, but a Windows workflow engine. So there is a lot of limitations in that area as well. And people ask, like, I already know PowerShell, I want to use PowerShell. You need to be aware that you will not get the benefits of workflows. So if you need to target a machine that will be restarted in a process, you cannot do that with a PowerShell script runbook. If you need those checkpoints, if you need to resume or suspend, you still need to use workflows. Graphical ones are also based on workflow, on PowerShell workflows. So how do you get runbooks? The easiest way to get them is to get them from a runbook gallery, which is a part of automation account. Or you can create your own. Runbook Gallery right now is linked to TechNet Script Center, but that might change in the future. Because already when you go to PowershellGallery.com and you click on a scripts link, you will find some of the scripts there created by Azure Automation team. So I think that they are probably testing to see how that will work, because they want probably in the future PowershellGallery.com to be the central place for everything, right? How can you create your own? So you can edit your runbook in a text editor in Azure portal, or you can use a Powershell ISE for it, and then when you're done, you can import that runbook to automation account. You can also use graphical editor when you work with graphical runbooks. And for now, we cannot convert graphical into any other kind, or convert workflows or script runbooks into graphical ones. It doesn't work for now, but that might change. In public preview is actually Automation Graphical Authoring SDK, so that developers can create, using code, graphical runbooks, or they can edit graphical runbooks that they exported from automation. So let's look at the runbooks and see how that works. Okay, I was here, I think, yes. So when I go to automation account, here's the one. I have a bunch of runbooks here, and I want to show you first that tutorial one. That one is a type of a workflow runbook. And as you can see here, we have lots of options, what we can do with the runbook. This one is very recent. Before, if you wanted to look at the content of a runbook, you needed to click on Edit, and immediately you will change a mode from that runbook, because runbook can be new, can be in edit, can be published. So immediately when you press Edit, it's in edit mode. It's not the best solution, so they introduced View. So with View, you will just look at the content without actually changing anything around it. You have some settings, so you can set up a schedule or webhook, or delete it, or export it so that you can work on it later in ISE, for example. So you will get the code for it. But let's click on View for now, just to see how. Oh, View is maybe too light, right? So let me go to Edit Better. I think it's a little bit better contrast, right? So you see here that it looks actually like any workflow that you will create in a PowerShell ISE, right? And the experience is quite the same. The good thing here is that you also get here in the left pane options to get immediately list of assets that are defined. So if you need some credentials, you will get the name here. You don't need to go outside of this pane to or make a note for those kind of things. And this is a workflow one. So let's look at the one that it's a script. So I have here this one. You can also notice probably that they have different icons. The PowerShell script ones are blue, and workflows are black, and graphical ones have a different icon that shows some graphical things. So now I'm in Start Azure V2 VM. I can press Edit. I can look what it's done. This is also downloaded from a gallery, so it's pretty well supported with a nice help. And I have also a test pane here. So I can test my runbooks before I publish them. This is the last result. You will always see the last result here. The thing is that it's not actually testing. Once when you execute that, you run that against real stuff, real resources. So be careful about it. I would like that they provide some warning, especially for new users, so that And you know, when you test something, you don't expect something to change in your production. Here, it will change. So always test in a non-production environment, okay? As you can see here, we have a pretty good support now for parameters with some additional information that I can show you here. So you have information that it's optional, what type of variable or parameter it's expected, does it have a default value or not. Another cool thing is also that those tooltips that will give you more information, what will happen if you want to run it. And let me give you just an example how it works when I run it. So I think that the name of my VMX demo, okay. And for now, I will try. So I will try to start a VM that it's already started, okay. So what will happen is that this runbook will try to do it, and it will fail. So if everything is okay and expected, actually, I will get a message that it failed to start, and I will get the error message back. So this is how it works. The job that it's created when you start a runbook goes through different phases. So it's first queued on a runbook worker that it's in Azure. That's some sandbox machine shared by multiple tenants, okay? So you have one thing that we didn't talk about that's called fair share. So your runbook can run only for 3 hours. After that, it will be suspended if it's a workflow kind. If it's a PowerShell script, it will just fail because it's not completed. So how you deal with the processes that will run for longer than 3 hours? What do you think? You can put a checkpoint so that they are suspended, and then they will, when they are restarted, they will start from that point without executing all those things before. The good thing to remember, and actually one of the best hints that I will give you, is that every time when you have a checkpoint in your workflow runbook, you need to re-authenticate, okay? Because you don't know will that runbook, will that job will resume on some other server in Azure, okay? So every time when you have a checkpoint, after that, you need to have that piece of code that you've seen on a slide when I authenticated again to my Azure resources. So if you have that like a 5 checkpoints, you need to re-authenticate 5 times after all those. So this is a proper behavior, and just wanted to give you experience of like how it looks like when we test things. And let me show you how it looks like when we look at the graphical one. So the graphical one, if you click on a view, you will just get access to those boxes and see how they look like. You have some additional control to zoom and do that kind of stuff. But when you edit things, then here I discovered that you need to kind of do a little bit of a scaling first so that you can work in, and then you will get those scroll bars here. When you click on the boxes, then you will get additional options. So if you're familiar with the orchestrator, it's pretty much very similar experience to that one. But a lot of people that like to work with a PowerShell actually, and they say like, we don't need these things. Why you introduce graphical ones here? And one of the use cases that it kind of makes sense is when you have a bunch of runbooks written as a workflow or workflow runbooks, then later you can combine some of them into graphical one and get a visual representation of that orchestration of different workflow runbooks. That makes sense, right? Not starting from a scratch, but once when you have something modularized into single workflow runbooks, you combine them visually. It's easier for a lot of people to understand how the process flow and what's really happening. So that's about graphical ones. Let's go back to our presentation. So I show you one way to start a runbook from Azure portal. There are other ways as well. You can start with Windows PowerShell. You can use Start Azure RM Automation Runbook or the commandlet without RM that will target service management. You can also use Azure Automation API that's for developers. You can use a webhook, which is a web call to your runbook that will trigger execution. You will not get the results, you will just trigger a job, and then you will later find different ways to find actually the result of that job. You can also respond to Azure alerts. They introduced in Operation Management Suite 2 new preview features about alerting, and then when you create alerts in OMS that will react on some search. So for example, if you are searching your event log, and in event log you find out that one of your servers is shut down because you have written that kind of event into an event log, then you can trigger a runbook for starting that machine. It's pretty awesome because you don't need to be there. All of those things will be automatically done for you. The most common way to execute runbooks is with the scheduling. Right now, Azure Automation has his own schedule. It's not connected to Azure Schedule Service. Some people are asking for that support because you have a better control with Azure Schedule. You can do it like in a minute. With the schedule that it's present in Azure Automation, you can do it by hour. That's the smallest. And you can also run your runbooks from another runbooks. Okay? You can nest them. Well, there are some rules now because we have 3 different kinds. So without going into a lot of details, but this is more for a reference for you later when you get this slide deck, this is a runbook job lifecycle for workflow and graphical ones, because they are both based on a workflow, and they have a different behavior than one that is based only on scripts. Why? Because those jobs can be suspended and resumed. One of the interesting thing here I've just highlighted, and those are the 4 final statuses of your jobs. So we have 4 different ones: failed, suspended, completed, and stopped. So once when you deal with the results, you need to do some do-while loop that will check for those. And then when you have one of those 4, you will know that, okay, now I can investigate later and see, like, is it completed? And those are the final results. Or if it's suspended, to look why it's suspended, or if it's intentionally suspended, then I can resume it. When we talk about life cycle for PowerShell runbook jobs, then it's a little bit different because they cannot be suspended. Okay? So here it's failed, stopped, or completed. No? Completed is what we want. Stopped if user stops runbook for some reason. Maybe you discover a bug in your code just immediately when you started it or something like that, or it works too long and you expect it to kind of finish it before that. So let me show you a little bit of interesting things like how we nest different runbooks and how can we trigger execution of a runbook using a webhook. So let me go to runbooks. And I will show you here a parent script. The important thing here actually is to see how we call different kind of runbooks in it. It's not important right now what's in those child runbooks. So if this is a PowerShell script-based parent runbook. How you call another PowerShell script runbook? You need to use dot and a backslash, the name of the runbook, and add .ps1. This is the only way how can you call your other PowerShell script runbook. Okay? If you want to call PowerShell workflow runbook from PowerShell script runbook, you cannot do that inline. You cannot just say the name of a runbook. You need to use commandlet to call it. And another thing is your child runbooks need to be published already, okay? They cannot be in any other mode. They need to be published. Otherwise, they cannot be called. So start Azure RM Automation Runbook is a commandlet when you work with resource management based, and you specify a resource group, an automation account, and then the name of a workflow. And that will run it. Because it's not just immediately because you are using a commandlet, what you need to do before that. You need to do authentication as well. So actually, those three commands are part of a call. So first, I'm referencing to my credential that I stored in credential assets. Then I log in to my subscription, and then I can execute stuff. Okay? It's a little bit complicated, I know, but this is how it is, and it's good to know how to work with those. Because sometimes it's very important not to create a very long runbooks. Why? Because it's hard to troubleshoot them. It's better if we do a little simple task and then combine them. How can they combine them? In a way that we will nest them and just call them, right? So let me show you how can we work with the webhooks and use that web call to start execution of a runbook. For that, I created a runbook called test webhook. And as you can see here, I have option webhook. So when I click on it, I have options to create a new webhook. So you can create multiple webhooks on the same runbook. The experience is like this. You need to specify some name for it, to say is it enabled or disabled. Then you can specify the expiration date, for example. So if you want something to happen only this week, you will set the expiration date 1 week ahead, and that will work. And then we come to the most important thing here, this URL that will be created for you, and this is the only moment that will be exposed to you. So when you like to work with the webhooks, right now, when you copy that, you need to store it something securely. Why? Because that URL contains a security token. This is how the authentication and authorization is done. Okay? So you don't want to share that with everyone. So this is experience for creating a new one, but I will just show you, I already have one, so I will show you that here I can change something because I defined parameters. My script actually is a hello world example, nothing more complicated than that. And here you can specify a value for that parameter. So in this case, I will set that to NIC 2016. And just today we discovered a bug that even if you have a default value as a world, it will not be used. So I need to check with the team, but it looks like it's a bug. And then you can specify, do you want to execute on an Azure or a hybrid worker? We will talk about hybrid worker just in a minute. So once when I have this, I expect this to, oh, maybe it's just changed. Okay. So there are a few different ways to actually trigger execution using a webhook. You can combine that with an alert, or you can use a PowerShell, for example, to run it. So here first, I want to show you a command to create a webhook from PowerShell. Okay? So that action that I've just performed in a portal is doable also in a PowerShell. So to create a new webhook, you will run new Azure RM Automation webhook. You will specify a resource group for your automation account, the name of your automation account. Here is a little back tick here, just to be sure that we are continuing here. Then I will specify a runbook name, give a name to a webhook, say that it's enabled. So even if it's default there, you need to specify it here. It will complain because it's a mandatory value. And then you will set expire time. So this is how you do it in a PowerShell. Once when you have it, how you work with it. First, what you need is that URI that I mentioned, right? So I will set that, and then you need to specify some headers for that web call that you will do. And we are working here with the JSON format. Are you familiar with the JSON format? If not, you should be very soon, because ARM templates, the future of creating Azure infrastructure, and also Azure Stack infrastructure on premises is based on ARM templates, and ARM templates are written as a JSON file. So it will be, at the next NIC, probably very, very important, and you will see a lot of sessions around it. So now I can, so this example actually is from documentation, and I think that they need to correct a few things here and there, because you will realize one thing, that the parameters are actually ignored. Once when you define a webhook, the parameters that you set there, the values that you set for parameters in a webhook, they cannot be overwritten. So I had NIC 2016 without space between number and NIC. Here I have it with a space. So let's see what's happened. I define the parameters. I need to convert that to JSON so that I can pass that to my web call. And here I'm using invoke REST method. I'm specifying a method for as a post. You always need to do that. And then you specify URI, headers, and a body. Once when you're done with that, what you get is actually just a job ID, nothing more than that. You cannot control results. You get just job ID. And with other PowerShell commandlets, you can get results later, or you can go back to your Azure portal and look at jobs for particular runbook. And you can see this is the one, 441. It's completed without errors. I can look at the output, and you can see here that the value that I specified during creation of a webhook is here. There is no space. So actually, you don't need to pass that body. It doesn't work. Okay? So this is how it works now. I think that they need to change the documentation a little, because this is really a proof that it's just ignored, right? What you specify doesn't really work. The thing that you specify at the moment of a creation, it counts. Azure Automation Hybrid Runbook Worker allows you to execute runbooks on premises to manage your local resources in your data center. You can add multiple machines to your hybrid worker group to get a high availability, right? You don't want to have just one. So you create practically a group of them and then add a bunch of servers there. And once when Azure Automation puts a runbook on premises, one of them will take care of your runbook. Why would you like to do that? Because it's super awesome to have like a central point for all your runbooks. And now that they support the PowerShell scripts, we can put all our repositories and all our stuff in a cloud base to be available everywhere, targeting machines in Azure or on premises, which is absolutely fantastic. You don't need actually to change anything for inbound firewall rules at all, because actually your hybrid runbook worker will ask Azure Automation, do you have something for me? And then it will get runbooks and the assets and everything that it's needed. So it's not that communication is started by Azure Automation. The hybrid runbook worker is the one who is doing that. How can you, so this is an image of the process that we're getting. So here on a I don't know, left, right side, you get the Azure kind of part with automation, and then you run runbooks against your resources in Azure. But also here on premises, thanks to a hybrid runbook worker, those runbooks will be delivered to your on-premises machine, and then that machine will execute runbooks against your local resources. That's absolutely amazing. It's even, it's not just for on-premises. So let's see and look at this kind of example. When you have a test domain, for example, or even production domain in Azure, using Azure VMs, it makes sense to promote one of your machines in that environment also to hybrid workers, so that you can use Azure Automation against that machine in case when you need to execute some commandlets that belong to a module which cannot be imported into Azure Automation. That's one of the scenarios that it's really super cool, right? Because otherwise it cannot be possible at all. And you just promote one machine. How you do that, you need to work with the Operation Manager suite. You need to install Microsoft Monitoring or Management Agent. You will find both terms. And once when you have those so-called solutions in Operation Manager suite, one of them is called Automation. So once when you have it, it will put a hybrid worker module on your machine. And once when you run a command for adding that machine as a hybrid worker, everything is done. So how you do that, it's not that hard. I will show you here. Add hybrid runbook worker. You need to specify the name of a group, because you can add multiple ones. And then you need to specify the endpoint for your automation account and a key, a token for it. When you get them, if you go to your automation account, you can see them here. Or you can get them also by PowerShell, but we will not go there. So you get the URL, you get the token here, and then you have your hybrid worker group. You define it here. You can configure it. So, for example, if you go here, you can see that actually you have access to see which of your machines are hybrid workers. In this case, I'm using one that it's part of my Azure domain. And you can also configure, not this configure, but one step before. Here, you see that I can specify credentials that will be used for execution. For in this case, for example, because by default, you will execute as a local system. So here I use very unsecure thing to define the domain admin as the one that will be used. But I will never actually retype or do something. That domain account is a credential asset. So it's stored securely in a SQL database that it's part of this service. And I can use that to run runbooks from that hybrid worker. So to show you one of the examples for that, I have a runbook called Test Hybrid Worker. And I find it really interesting what he's doing is that what I want to do, because I have that Azure, that domain in Azure VMs, and my server 2 is a hybrid worker. I want to get information about all my computers in that domain from that machine. How can I do that? I can create a session to my domain controller in Azure VM, import Active Directory module, because Active Directory module cannot be imported into Azure Automation. So I will import it inside of this runbook, and then I will get information about my commandlets. So let's go to test pane and see, this is the old result, so it works here, but let me start. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake. I should need to change the run on. So now it will produce a lot of errors because I'm trying to execute this on Azure machines. They are not, they don't know nothing about this environment. I need to check this to a hybrid worker, and then it will run. So I will go back to this example later. You can also configure this when you work with a PowerShell, and you have a run on a parameter there as well. So this is the demo for that. Okay. Azure Automation DSC. If you have been to a previous session by Jan Egelring when he talked about DSC in production and all those things, he also mentioned this new service that went GA very recently. And it's actually a PowerShell DSC pool server in a cloud. It enables you to configure management of machines in Azure, on premises, Amazon cloud, in any cloud that you want. Doesn't matter if it's a virtual or it's a physical. As long as you set your local configuration manager settings to point to this pool server, that pool server will control the management configuration on that machine. So it's absolutely fantastic. They will also introduce support for Linux, if it's not already. I cannot really cope with all the changes. It's happening every single day. So how you do that, you need to so-called onboard your machine and connect it to that service. You can do that with a PowerShell. You can do that through a portal as well. So let me show you how that works in a portal. But first, just a little bit about terms, because if you're familiar already with the PowerShell Design Stand configuration, they introduced some new terms for the same things here, actually. So, for example, when they say node configuration, that's a MOV file, okay? And once when you have that MOV file, you need to compile it. So it will do that in creating a job for it. That's the kind of a similar experience like when you work with the runbooks and they create jobs. Here, when you compile MOV files, then they also create jobs. And once they create the jobs, the final DSC item is then set on a DSC pool server, and it's available to your nodes so that you can link them together. Okay. So this is how it looks like in a experience here. So you can see here we got a lot of errors, but let me just show you, because I think this is a pretty nice example here, and it will work very quickly. In the meantime, I will mention a few things about promoting a machine to a DSC node, or onboarding that machine. And when you do that, you need to be aware that different versions of WMF or PowerShell will be installed on your machines. So when you work with a PowerShell and you work with the Azure DSC extension to do that, you have option to specify, do you want to keep PowerShell 4, or do you want to go with the latest? And the latest will push PowerShell 5 production preview right now, because you probably heard that the PowerShell 5 RTM is removed. For the last 6 weeks, they are fixing some things there, so we are eagerly waiting for it to happen. When you work from a portal and you onboard machine as a DSC node, the PowerShell 4 will be installed on it. So here is that example that I got information about all the computers that I have in my Azure test domain. Isn't that cool? You can imagine this is also absolutely the same experience if that test domain was on premises. It will act in the absolutely same way. So let me show you how it looks like when we work with Azure Automation DSC. So the first thing that you do is you onboard some machines so that you can control them from Azure Automation DSC. When you click here, you have an option to add Azure VM directly from portal, or you can add on-premises VM. If you do that with on-premises, you will practically be redirected to a documentation how to do it. Because you cannot do that immediately from a portal, you need to get hands on a zip file that contains local configuration management settings. Once when you have that, you will apply that to your machine, and from that point, your machine on premises will be connected to a cloud-based pool server. In my case, I added one of my Azure VMs here, and you can see that I already also linked it to a configuration that I have in my system. But just to look here, what's happening is once when you click on it to get more, you get this warning that says, please update your node to the latest one so that you will get a better detailed reports on it. Because Azure Automation DSC is not just a pool server, it's also a reporting server. And we will get more and more of those reports about the state of our machines. And actually, we'll get info and insights into all the resources that were part of that configuration, which is really great. So what's happening right now is like if you click on one, you get pretty raw information here, right? There is a much better experience now if your machine has PowerShell 5. How you add configuration to a system? You can do that with a PowerShell as well, but if you don't want to do it with a PowerShell, then you can do it with a portal. You go to a DSC configuration style, you click on it, and then you add a configuration. Configuration is just a PowerShell script with your DSC configuration. How does it look like? So here is the one that I'm using. It's really simple. It just defines that I want one security group to be present. Nothing more than that. Okay? You don't need to specify here the actual name of your server. You always use localhost. Why? Because it's applied locally. Okay? It will be transferred to your machine and applied locally on it. So when you add a file that you select it, you add it here, give it a name. Actually, it will be, if it's proper configuration file, it will be populated for you. And once when you have it, then you need to compile it so that it will be available to your DSC nodes to make a link between them. So you click on it, and then you have a compile option. So depending on the size of your configuration, it will last for a few seconds or a little bit more than that. And after that, when it's compiled, it will be put properly in a pool server, and then you can do a linkage between a DSC node and that configuration. Once when you have them, when that configuration is applied to your DSC node, when you go to DSC node, you can see that it's compliant. You will see information about the configuration and when it's last checked. So if you have a bunch of DSC nodes and a bunch of different configuration and stuff, you will get here information if it's not compliant anymore or if it's unavailable and all those things, and you can drill down and get a proper reporting about all that stuff and have a pretty good experience with it. You might also see that here I have a nice add-on for a Powershell ISE that enables me to use runbooks and work with them from the interface of PowerShell ISE. It's available on the PowershellGallery.com. You can just install it from that if you have package management or PowerShell 5. And how does it work? You need to sign in using that account that you created, but I need to retype it because, let me see. It's so long, I will copy it like this, run it, password. It's always clever to talk when you type passwords, right? So now when you have it, it will try to get information from my automation account. So right now you can see that it set an automation account to my automation account that I created for demo purposes today, so I will need to change that. Once when I change that, you see here that it's downloading a bunch of things, runbooks, assets, and all that stuff. And once when you have all that, you can go to runbooks and you can see a list of your runbooks. And you can work with them because you can just pick one. Which one? Let's pick this one. We already seen this one, so let's look at that one once more. You will download that one, and then you will open it. You will change something here, and then you will upload it back. And it works better, actually, and faster than in automation account. You can also test. So once when I run it here, see, it's much faster. Isn't that awesome? Super. Great stuff. I mean, I was really surprised how fast it is. So what's wrong with the browser? I mean, the backend is pretty fast. The great stuff here is also that you get access to assets. And for example, you can pick different kinds here. So you have variables. All those that are marked with red are encrypted. And the thing is that they are not passed to your local machine. So, sorry, you need to specify them for the first time. So this one is also credential. It used to be red, but then I edited locally, and I added actual password here. And from that moment, I can use that asset inside of my runbooks here locally on machine, it will work. So once when I set passwords for those two, they will not be read anymore as well. Okay? So that's pretty cool. You also get the information about are they in sync or not. Do you need to update them? Really, really great stuff. They're developing that all the time. It's hosted on the GitHub. You can collaborate. You can file issues if you have them. So it's really, really good. I like it a lot. So that's the one. And the resources for all this, Azure Automation team has a blog. They also have a forum for filing bugs and those kind of things. And they also have a feedback forum if you have some suggestions for improving things. So this is one of the slides that some people asked me to share with you. This is a charity for helping kids from Syria. So if you go to this tiny URL, NIC 2016, you will get more information about it. And that's all from me for today. Thank you.